Hi, Ryan. How are you? Are
Hello.
you ready?
Hi. I'm pretty great. Thank you. How about you?
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Sound quality is okay. You can hear me well?
Yep.
Okay, good. That's what I needed now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping there's no technical error. Um, so what we're doing is, hold on. So what we're hoping is, so the plan for our backup plan for iSEAu, in the event that there's a prolonged technical error where I am unable to connect, one of the other team member will continue on as a moderator. So don't be, scared. Well,
Yeah.
said it's somebody else. But that's our backup plan should there be any technical error
All right. Gotcha.
halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
We hope they would.
Yeah. Finger crossed. We'll see.
Yes. Just share. I'm trying to see on YouTube if that's already on.
I think it's already on, right?
It is. Okay, I think this is using. Okay. Hello, hi, Ryan. Thank you. We'll make a start. I think we're connected in all our platform.
Okay.
So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the iSEAu podcast. Today, we have an important topic to discuss. One, I'm sure that affects many students in the ASEAN region. So, I'm your host for today. For the second episode, I'm Faya from the One ASEAN team, and we'll be exploring the barriers that you may find in learning the English language. We're going to be looking at how this barrier may impact us as the ASEAN youth in terms of applying for higher education outside of our country. And we'll also discuss strategies to improve our language skills. Okay, so that's what we'll be covering for today. Now, before we dive into this exciting discussion, I want to have a little icebreaker to warm things up. So, whether you're sipping coffee in Singapore, whether you're exploring the beaches in Philippines, or just enjoying the rich culture of Indonesia, we want to hear from you. So, audience, if you're all there, please scan the QR code on the screen and share with us the city that you're joining us from. Let me just share my screen. Bear with me for a moment. Sorry. All right. So if you could just join in with the QR code that you see here, or you could join us at slido.com together with and you input the number 8933180. And maybe just share with us where you're joining us from. So at least we have an idea who we have joining us this evening. Ryan, feel free to include yourself in here.
Sure.
think we have people coming. Oh, we've got from Ho Chi Minh, Indonesia.
Oh, we got Manila.
Yeah, we do. We've got Manila, Ho Chi Minh, Indonesia. Just so you know, everybody, you can also use this QR code to send in any Q&A that you have for our speaker and with regards to the topic we're discussing today. So if you scan the code, you can also go to a Q&A session, and you could just send in your Q&A, and we'll definitely be looking at that at the end of this session. Oh, we also have Brunei. Fantastic. Represent.
Oh, they are from Bangkok too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so great to see such a diverse audience joining us today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the iSEAu experience. Thank you for joining us for the second episode of the iSEAu podcast. Again, a gentle reminder, aside from the sharing where you're from, you can also use the same QR code to input any question, share any questions that you may have as we go along with the podcast today. All right. I think we could go back to that later as they continue to come in. Oh, we're getting more. Fantastic. We'll continue on to see that, see how many people have continued to add on where they're from. Okay. Bear with me. So, apologies for the slight technical error. So for this second episode, sorry, tongue twister. For the second episode, we're honored to have a very special guest with us today, a very good friend of mine, Mr. Ryan Cipta Julianda. We are so delighted to have you here, Ryan. Just for our audience, I'm sure you've heard of Ryan before, but just to introduce you, Ryan is the Director of Best Partner Education and the Director of Operation for Budayakan Anak Bangsa Foundation, which is a non-formal education and language training center in West Kalimantan, Indonesia. He has 10 years of experience in TESOL as an English teacher and a language assessor in Indonesia. He is a Fulbright and YSEAu regional workshop alumni and also very passionate about fostering language proficiency and cultural exchange. On top of that, he's not done. On top of that, his part-time job includes being an instructor for the Indonesian Embassy, virtual teaching Indonesian to speakers of other language classes in Washington, D.C. And he is an assessor for human resources management under the auspice of the Indonesian Professional Certification Authority. Then that's who we have today. Just a quick chat, Ryan. Would you like to share a little bit about the organization that you are involved in?
All right. Thank you so much, Faya. And I am very grateful that I could be here. And thank you so much for iSEAu project for inviting me here. It is such a pleasure. We knew each other back at Hanoi, Vietnam, through the YSEAu regional workshop, and now we met again here in this outstanding event that we have right now. So my organization is basically we're, as you said before, so we're focusing with the language school and language education, and then also non-formal education as well in Pontianak City, West Kalimantan. So we're also a test center for IELTS, PTE, and then also TOEFL, ITP, and then also we're trying to get our hands into TOEFL IBT as well in the future. So we have a lot of things coming up into our organization. So yeah, we'll see in the future. I'm hoping for a great thing in the future for our organization. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much. That sounds fantastic. I love just how your organization is helping the youth out there to kind of reach their potential break barriers, help them, overcome such obstacle, right? Fantastic. Please, for those who have not followed them already, do please follow them on their Facebook, on their Instagram, so you could find out more about what they do. So let's dig into our first segment of today. We're going to be looking at barriers in learning English. So our first discussion point revolves around the barrier that many students face while learning English. So these barriers that we've identified, these are actually based on research our team has conducted within their ASEAN region. So there are four major ones that we've identified. One of them is low confidence, lack of motivation, limited opportunities for practicing English, and also and I think most of us face this in the majority of the ASEAN countries, is financial constraint. Each of these factors, it's very daunting. Even if you just have one of these factors, it's daunting. And I'm sure there are people who are facing all four of these factors, right? So what are your thoughts, Ryan, on this? How can they overcome this obstacle when they're trying to learn English?
Right. You point out like really interesting 4 points that I think that most of young people who live in ASEAN region. So we have the same similar problems like in Indonesia, for example. I've been teaching English for like 10 years. So it's a decade already. But the problem is still revolving it with the same issue throughout, like lack of time to practice. Because in Indonesia, for example, English is as a foreign language. It's not as a second language. It is not something that we hear, generally people speaking English like on the street or maybe in the coffee shop. It's not like general language that we use for day-to-day purposes. And then financial as well is the same because English class, it tend to be expensive. It's not because we want to make it expensive, but like to find the right person to teach. As I mentioned again, English as a foreign language here in my country. So to find like a qualified teacher, it's pretty difficult if we don't have enough incentive for the teacher itself. And for fostering like widespread education through especially English itself to many people, it could be done but challenging at the same time. And then like the third issue that you mentioned is about another thing is like the opportunity itself, right? The opportunity to practice. I mean, I remember that my student ever told me that I want to learn English, but like if I use English, then my friend will bully me, or perhaps my friend will start to tease me. So it kind of like making them to have low motivation to do that because of social pressure itself that happen. And I believe that also maybe in another country in Asian region is also pretty much the same because of how English itself being seen, and then like how not many people, want to learn that language just because maybe they don't know how to use that language for their career or maybe for the academic excellence in the future itself. For me, it's something that myself as an English teacher is trying to change along with my other friends who are also a fellow teacher. So we are trying to, change people's mindset, especially in my own region. So we like to visit schools or maybe to the university, and then I'm gathering people who ever got their scholarship or maybe fellowship to countries abroad. So I wanted to show to people in general that if you have this language in particular, which is the international language, right? It could break down the walls of new opportunities in the future. And that's something that we oftenly do. And then although it will take the effect itself, it's not going to be coming right through us like instantly. It will take time for it to change, but slowly I think that positively I would see that there will be a change, especially right now in my country. especially in our island in Kalimantan, we will have a new capital in which that many people will be interested, especially foreigners. They wanted to go there. They wanted to, I don't know, put something new in the new capital. So there's another new motivation, especially for the Indonesian to learn English. And I believe that other country also pretty much the same. Like, we're in the we're in the age of development. Like our region is like becoming I would say headlines, because it's potential for many people right now in the world. So yeah, I guess that's my thought about it.
Sorry. Yes, I agree with you. I think positive, I think that the positive reinforcement is the way to go. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, we talk about confidence and motivation. That can be very subjective, right? The level of confidence and the level of motivation for each individual can be different at a different level. So I think, for what we can do as educator, and also as friends, we should try to have positive reinforcement on them trying to learn English, right?
That's true.
And I so relate to you when you said how you can get teased or bullied for trying to speak English. Because I saw this growing up, going to primary school or in high school, when you try to, so I've always tried to improve my accent in English.
Right.
And when I do so, people just make fun. They're like, "Oh, you're trying to sound white. You're trying to sound posh."
Exactly. And that we know that Brunei is, the second language is, English, right?
Yes.
I mean, just imagine myself, like living in Indonesia, where, as I mentioned, it's EFL, English for foreign language. So the kind of tease and bullying is in another different level.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could kill like a student that maybe he has like a passion, or perhaps like he just really love English, because of maybe the pop culture, or maybe just he could read a lot of things because he unlocked that by mastering English, right? But because of the the situation around him, especially social pressure and then peer pressure from his friend in school, so it could really hurt this young person motivation to he wanted to try different things. He wanted to try mastering this international language.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing, I mean, financial constraint. I think we all face this, right? No matter at what level, whether it's trying to afford the materials to learn English, whether it's trying to afford going into a class, English class, or trying to afford the exams that you need to pay to go to these English classes. What do you think, do you think can you share with us any other alternative, for those who have really tight financial constraint, alternative as to how they can learn English, or even, programs that are free for them to learn English?
Yeah. We're living in, our technology is like, it's like sci-fi become sci-fac. Like science fiction becomes science fact. Like we have AI right now who can help us to learn English, to learn any other language even. We have a lot of applications from, from Pearson itself, from IELTS, or from British Council, or like many other, organization that could offer you like perhaps a free English class, or perhaps a free, application to your smartphones that could support your English proficiency, or maybe other languages as well. But one thing for sure is that we have the internet, ladies and gentlemen. So you have YouTube as well. As a language teacher, I believe that to learn the language itself, we have to approach it naturally. We cannot just simply focus with the textbook itself, because based on my experience learning English through textbook approach, in school, it doesn't work. It's not working at all. Trust me, I've been there. So I learned English basically, and remember the context is that English as a foreign language in Indonesia, right? So I don't have partners to speak. I don't have, my father and mother could not speak English, and my brother even, or my sister cannot speak English. So I can only depend on myself, basically. So how I do it? Well, basically at the time, I have my PlayStation, and then I play games. I play games that has like a role-playing aspect in it, in which that there's a text, there's an English text, and then I have to read it. In order for me to go from point A to point B, I need to understand the word itself, right? So at that time, when I was still young, so I have I have like what do you call it? Like a dictionary. And then the title of the dictionary is that 200 billion English words. So I put it next to me while playing the game. So if I don't understand the vocabulary, I open the dictionary. Now, for young people of Asian, it's easy to translate everything right now. You have AI, you have like, Google Translate, you have like all the necessary, like technological support that really, I wish that I had it when I was a kid. But now you guys have it all. So I don't think that, like talking about, oh, it's financial constraint because, I need to have a class. The best class is that if you can make your own class for your own self, that what your purpose to learn, right? So classroom itself, it doesn't mean that, you have to go to a course or something. You can basically, have a self-discipline, watch YouTube, maybe like an hour of like watching podcasts, like what we have right now, right? Or maybe basically trying to read something, but through audiobook, and then make it into your background noise while you do your work. That AI could read that book for you, and it's like it could be a passive learning for the language itself or any other languages that you wanted to pursue. Pretty much, it has like similar ways to do it, and I believe that with the technology right now, it could reduce the reasoning of like, oh, financial limitation or whatever it is. So with technology right now, yeah, you can simply have like a quality English learning or any other language learning through that technology.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that's a really eye opener because we tend to think when it's about learning, it has to be very formal, it has to be very
Right.
structured. But when we're talking about language, it doesn't have to be a boring classroom. Like you shared your experience, you were playing game, but you had a dictionary, you were learning while having fun, right? And with the accessibility of the internet, like the world is your oyster, the knowledge is at your fingertips.
Yes.
Which actually brings me nicely to our second segment of today. We'll be looking at the impact of language proficiency. Now, when we talk about language proficiency for the ASEAN youth, sometimes we think about, how the language skill is just about communication. Sometimes we just think, oh, I need to get the scholarship, so I need to learn English. Right. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we have this mindset, like we want to learn English, we want to pass this exam, so we could apply for that scholarship. And then that's it. And then I'm going to speak in my language, right? Like I'm going to pass the test, get the scholarship based on my certificate, and then I'm not going to talk about the language anymore, right? Sometimes we have that mindset. But I think, I want to discuss how the language itself can influence their educational experience, their academic performance, and even participation in in social gathering, in events, not necessarily formal events, but just informal events, like going out with your friends. How this the language proficiency, the lack of speaking in English or trying to speak in English, can prevent you or become a obstacle from you getting the full experience. And I'm sure you are one of the best person to talk about this, having your experience, abroad, in a foreign country where the main language is English.
Right. So that's true. I mean, like, if you have like English, for example, right? So we're talking about English first. So English is as an international language, right? So basically, like, more than a billion people talk using this language, So it's like the most used language in the whole world. And to have this kind of language, right? It unlocks a lot of things. So other than the scholarship thing, other than the fellowship, or like the one that we had, Faya, the Wisely thing. So other than that, there's like, getting academic excellence is an absolute within your reach. I mean, because like when you had this language, then your knowledge is not just focusing with the knowledge that your country has, but you can also unlock the knowledge that happens outside your own country, right? You can read a lot of books from other countries. You can read like maybe some research article, or maybe some other article, outside from your country, in which that maybe it's not, maybe it gives you a different perspective, different perspective, because it's like coming from other countries with different cultures, with different backgrounds as well. So usually students who master, or perhaps they had enough English capability, then their way of seeing things is sometimes it's different from like students who perhaps only mastering one language only, or maybe their own mother language, right? It doesn't mean that, they're like, for example, in Indonesia, there are some case where if you learn other language, you are not nationalist. You are not pro to your own country, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, for example, like me, I don't think so, because like, how can you represent your country maybe in such an event, for example, like Wisely workshop before that we attended? How can you be there representing, giving the voice of how Indonesians think about it, or maybe giving input and so on? Of course, it needs English, because I remember one quote from our former education minister long ago. So he said that young Indonesian people, we bring it to Singapore, they are all very smart, but once the Singaporean start to ask them, okay, let's talk about something, then those smart Indonesian students seems not looking smart, because they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to, use, or, trying to convey messages in a language that internationally accepted. And in this case, it's English, right? Now, so that's something that could, like, touching your point of like, academic excellency, or perhaps like opening whole new opportunities academically as well for students. It totally will give you a different perspective and open a lot of doors for you. Okay, and then not only just scholarship. People always think, learn English for scholarship, blah, 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 right? No, it's also like job opportunities. It's also like right now I'm doing this because I can speak in English. If I can only speak in Indonesian, I don't think that you guys will invite me in this case, right? So you never know, I never know as well. Like, I stick with my English, even though I got teased, even though I got bullied a lot, but I stick with it, and I become teacher for 10 years. And then lo and behold, it's just opening up, a lot of new things, and that perhaps I could never even imagine, so maybe that's my thought about it.
Thank you for sharing that. I kind of like when you were talking about, you were saying that we need to learn another language, especially a more common language, for us to be able to share our culture. That I was, well, like, oh my God, I had that exact conversation. Diana, our
Right.
Wisely fellow, I had that conversation with her last night over dinner.
Right.
So we were talking about how we want to showcase our culture, right? We want to showcase our identity as a nation. But if we are so focused on showcasing our culture in our mother tongue, it limits to who can understand us.
Exactly.
So we were actually having a debate how, being able to talk about our culture in English, a more common language that is spoken, will help with, cultural preservation,
Right.
with help with, knowledge, um, dispersing knowledge of our own identity, of our
It
nation
opens up a lot of
identity.
things. Yeah, it opens a lot of
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, when you said that, I'm like, yeah, Diana said that the other night. It's striker. I'm like, yeah, we had that conversation over
True.
dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. It's true. I totally agree with you. And
Mhm.
I like how you mentioned that, yeah, English, it's not just I have when I was in uni, I had a lot of international friends who English was not their mother tongue, was not their main language.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I observed from my friends was that they're very reluctant to join social events
Uh, mhm.
because they feel that sense, they're not going to understand me. Like,
Right.
and I always ask them, okay, to what extent, when are you going to join these social events? Something simple as going out with, the other classmates, something just very informal gathering that'd be so free to go because they're like, oh, they're not going to understand me. Like, I don't speak English. And I'm like, until when are you going to not join, all our outings?
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, once I improve my English. But then you miss this whole university experience because when you go to
I
uni,
agree.
it's not just about going to classes, right?
Exactly. I totally
um
agree with that. Yeah.
because
Like,
it's all
like
about the informal things too.
That's true. I mean, I always believe that, if you're given the chance to speak, then,
Mm,
grab hold on it and then just seize the day because you never know, like, if you're brave enough to speak or maybe to just put yourself into that situation, like
yeah.
you mentioned before, even though you know that you have like a limitation, right? But you
Mm,
just never know, like, there's a risk, I know, right? Maybe the embarrassment or maybe like nobody will pay attention to you, but like just putting yourself there, it's a one step to try to change your life. Maybe you just never know what will happen, like, yeah, that's like, I always believe, I always told to my student, if I
mm,
give you the chance to speak, you seize it. Okay, even though it's bad or something, I don't care, just
yeah.
get that courage first, because the importance is the courage, right? The courage to do, like, not becoming embarrassed just because,
Mm,
oh, the accent is wrong, oh, the pronunciation is wrong.
yeah.
Like, when I was in the US, right? They're very respectful. They know that I'm not from US. My English perhaps is not as perfect as the native speaker, right?
Mm,
They understand that limitation and they're fine with it. They don't even care about the what is it, the accent.
mm,
I still use my original accent until now, and they just don't care. So I asked them, right? The Americans, like my American friend over there, when I was in the Cornell University. So they said, it doesn't matter, Ryan, just speak to us. Like, yeah, are you sure? Because my English is no, your English is perfect. Okay. So it kind of like give me, a motivation again, like, that could be a good example of like, giving a positive, supportive system, right? If you want to learn English, like, just give your friends or maybe find a friend who are supporting you, like, even though you're saying a wrong thing, but like, oh, it's okay, you can be better. You need to find that place, that supportive, friend, I would say. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I mean, it's important to put yourself out there because it is part of having somebody to practice English with,
Mm-hmm.
right?
True.
Who better to practice English with but actual English speaker who
Exactly.
speaks it on a daily basis. And we have to put ourselves out there to allow us to practice. And
True.
um I think we should stop with this mentality that we're afraid that we're gonna get it wrong. It's okay, you're
Yeah, it's
learning.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. Like, I mean, like, they don't care about, like, oh, the
Mm,
accent is wrong, whatever, because, like, they know that you're not from there. They know
mm,
the limitation as well. So it's all about, like, you understand me, I understand you. Okay, that's it. That's all you need to do to communicate, right? Because that's the whole point of communication. It's all about, consensual two ways understanding between two individuals, right? So
definitely.
there you go.
Fantastic. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So everybody, as Ryan mentioned, feel free. Don't think that English is just a language that you're going to be using in academia. It's not just for school. It's
Mhm.
actually for socializing, for
Yeah.
networking. Finding jobs can help you when you have a common language. It helps you communicate with people better.
Mhm.
So moving on to our third segment for tonight, we'll be looking at language requirements for university admission. Now, this is very important.
Right.
Um, so university admission is obviously why we learn English
Yep.
for a lot of us. So if you could hear in the background, that's just the Azan Maghrib playing here
That's all
in
right.
Brunei. We've just gone into Maghrib. Um, so language proficiency test is a requirement for a lot of university admissions, right? And I think we talked about this slightly last night. How there's a new Pearson English you mentioned,
Oh, the PTE,
right?
the Pearson test.
Yeah. So
Pearson test.
I wanted to use this opportunity. I know some of us, some of the students out there may not be familiar with all these different language tests. So
Right.
let's discuss, the common one. Let's have a look at
Sure.
the common ones, such as IELTS,
Mhm.
TOEFL, and the one you mentioned, which you said it's more beneficial than IELTS. So
Gotcha.
let's see your view of these different tests and how they.
Right. So you're asking the right person because that's the whole, that's like our whole operation is based on that. Like we provide a test center for people who wanted to take one of these international English proven English tests like IELTS, TOEFL ITP, and then also PTE. Now PTE is not brand new per se, but they're like starting to got like attention from perhaps in Indonesia especially because compared to the other two tests that I mentioned before, PTE itself, it has the fastest certificate delivery. So usually for IELTS and then TOEFL, you need like perhaps 2 weeks to wait for the result. 13 days, 13 working days. So yeah, I could say 2 weeks. Yeah. So it's pretty much not user friendly to some extent because there are some cases where we need it as soon as possible. We need it tomorrow, for example. Now PTE could help you with that one. And then if we compare in terms of like what kind of language aspect being tested, it's pretty similar with TOEFL IBT and also IELTS a little bit in terms of like the language aspect. So they test your 4 language aspect: listening, reading, writing, and then speaking. But if you ever had an experience of doing the TOEFL IBT test, then it's pretty similar with PTE. But the difference is PTE is the grading or the scoring is done by AI. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the AI world, so it's sci-fact right now. So PTE use AI. Why AI? Because it's more objective. Because in IELTS, it still use human. There are still human hands in it. Doesn't mean that PTE has no human hands. There's still human hands in it. Perhaps doing the coding or perhaps like changing the system, all that stuff. But in terms of like the delivering of the judgment of like how your English perform, right? So it's all objective. If it's wrong, then it's wrong. The scoring system itself is very secretive to some extent. So it's pretty hard to help people to prepare this because they don't actually give you like clear scoring rubrics. It's very secretive. Unlike IELTS is like open. So, if you want to get 9 in IELTS, here's what you have to do. But for PTE, because they are starting to get their fame and then their name, so it's still secretive to some extent. But the test itself is again the fastest that you could get. So if you test today, for example, right? Today is August 5th. 2023, right? So if you test today in the morning at 9, you will get the result at 6 p.m. Yes, that's how fast it is. So it's super fast. So I was like, wow, that's actually really fast. That's why a lot of students in Indonesia, and particularly in my hometown, Pontianak City, a lot of them are, selecting PTE rather than IELTS or TOEFL because it's just fast, And in terms of maybe if someone asks, oh, what about the difficulties? Well, it's going to be difficult if you don't prepare yourself. If you have like maybe your English capability is not reaching the minimum level of before you do the test itself, or perhaps you're not reading, or perhaps you're not acquiring the right knowledge to prepare yourself for the test. So it's going to be difficult because like going to the test for me, it's like going to war. And before you go to war, you need to have an information first. Oh, what are you going to face and how to beat it? And then how many people in the war itself. So it's pretty much similar before going to war, I suppose.
Okay. Thank you for sharing like the commonalities and the differences between these three tests. I haven't applied for a university for a very long time, obviously. So I just wanted to have an idea, like, do students have the option on picking the test that they sit for, or is it usually the university will specify which test they require for the application?
Yeah, so usually like university, like if we're talking about European, so okay, it's definitely IELTS. It's definitely IELTS, European or the UK, right? I think most of the world are using IELTS, even in America. So they still use IELTS, but to some extent, I think that there's someone from the administrator or like from the student recruitment office back at Cornell. So they said that well, actually, if the student use TOEFL IBT, then it's easier for us to accept it. Quote unquote. For Australia, of course, right? Australia, IELTS. I mean, they're like part of the king's kingdom, right? So they're still using that. And then like I think for some other country, IELTS is still the most powerful one. It's more accessible, and most scholarship like they put IELTS on top, and then there's TOEFL IBT, and then there's PTE. So I would say that IELTS is like the big brother, and then TOEFL IBT is the second brother, and then like the youngest one is PTE. So like yeah, the oldest will get the priority, right?
I like how you gave them a hierarchy.
Right.
You gave them a family bonding of some sort. But yes,
Yeah.
I think that gives me a better, clear view on what tests students should prepare for. I think the key points also is to actually ask the university instead of just assuming, right?
Or you can just simply check, through their website, right? There's, or again, ladies and gentlemen, we have internet. It's already there. We just have to read it. And then if you don't understand, you can ask or email them, or perhaps there's even a chat bot, right? Where you can ask. So it's really technologically easier for us right now, especially in this time and age.
Yeah, I definitely. I think that's a good. That's a good. We need to check the university what we're applying for. If a majority of the university that you want to apply for is in Europe or in the UK, as Mr. Ryan mentioned, then you may want to consider doing an IELTS. Whereas if it's in another countries, then it would be maybe TOEFL or what was the one you mentioned? Sorry,
PTE.
PTE, yeah, definitely. Which move on to our fourth segment, looking at strategies. So earlier, Mr. Ryan mentioned the use of gaming on helping us improving our language skills. Would you like to share other practical approaches that students can take in terms of improving their language?
Okay. So other than what you mentioned before, gaming, right? I think everyone has their own like ways to improve their English, right? But if you ask me through my professional views and then experience, I would say that first of all, the most practical thing that you could do is simply set like a habit. You have to create a habit. So for me, myself, the easiest one that I could do is that I'm going to have like a mindset where English is like food. So when we're talking about food, then there's breakfast, there's lunch, there's dinner, and then there's supper. And we all know we all love supper. Okay, so so for in the morning, what will I do, right? So in the morning, then after I pray, after I wake up, then I usually just watch something on YouTube. It's random stuff. The first thing that came up, I'm just going to watch it, as long as it is in English. Just give myself 15 minutes to watch it, and then that's it. And then I stop, and then I take a bath, and then after that I go to work, and then during lunch, then I will open, right now I'm currently opening like internetarchive.com, where I select a book there, and then I ask the website to read me that book. So again, like using that technology, right? And then I just put my AirPods, and then I just let it talk while I eat. It becomes my background noise. Whatever book that I want. And currently, because I just watched Oppenheimer, so I was like, so I'm currently interested with Oppenheimer. So I asked the website to find me a book about Oppenheimer and then read it for me. And then it becomes my background noise for like 30 minutes, and that's it. And then like for dinner, well, I love to watch movies. So I watch movies or Netflix or series or whatever the time that I have. So I just, going to do that. And for the supper, if I cannot sleep, I turn into my Steam, and then I play games. Like currently, I'm playing Resident Evil 4. So I played that games because there's a story in it, right? And then that actually helps me to improve my English, because again, to finish the game, you need to understand the story, right? So that's how I do it. And it's not very academic, right? It's not. And as you can see, the way that I speak, well, it's not perfect. It's not native-like, but at the very least, it's passable, and it's like, okay. And maybe for you, Faya, you could understand what I'm trying to say. So it really helps for me, guys. So that would be the most practical one, in my opinion. Just set it, like set a timeline, or, make your own mindset of how you think English is, right? Because I believe, not only because I'm an English teacher and I need that language, but also what other opportunities await me if I have a good English. Because it does, it really is something that you need to think about as well. For me, English is going to open a lot of things for me later on. Either it's positive or negative, I don't know, but it's in the future. But I'm going to just try my best and then try to improve every single day, so that one day, if there's an opportunity and then my English is good enough, and how to prove my English is good enough, well, through IELTS or take PTE or take TOEFL ITP test, and then you have that certificate, and then like that opportunity asks you, okay, can you speak English? Yes, of course. Where's the proof? Oh, I got IELTS 7. Okay, sure. And then I got the job. I got a new opportunity, and yeah, it's because of, again, setting that, discipline to yourself. That would be, I think, the most practical one. And it's just watching YouTube, reading through internet, or not reading, ask the website to read for me. Right? And then watch something. Everyone has Netflix right now. Okay.
Exactly.
And last one is, well, play games. Just having fun through it.
Definitely. I like how you say, how you kind of given us the idea that it shouldn't be, okay, 2 hours of studying English.
No.
That it should be, palatable, just small chunks of practicing English throughout the day. And it doesn't feel like, if I was to do that, it doesn't feel as if it's a chore. It doesn't feel as if it's homework. It's actually just, part of my day to day. And at the same time, I'm learning, right?
Exactly. And then I was like, because I'm a teacher, so I was curious, like, okay, is there any theory or like language approach that support my way of learning? And yes, there is. It's called natural language approach. So it is from Stephen Krashen, and I forgot the other researcher name, but she's a lady. But it said, but he said that, if you learn language, it's supposedly come naturally. It's supposedly when you encounter that language, the target language that you want to learn, it must be natural so that your brain or the language part of your brain could maintain that language, and it can stick with you for a long term. But because if you learn it like, 2 hours reading grammar books, you're asking your brain to force itself to learn, in which that it's not sticking. And I think like when I said the way that I learned before, right? Putting it into chunks. So it's actually backed up by a theory, and there's a theory about it. And if you guys want to read more about it, just Google it, the natural language approach. So you can do that. And so it surprises me actually, Faya, that, actually there's a theory about it. Okay.
You didn't know that you were practicing it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think, all of these things that we do, sometimes we don't realize that there's actually a scientific explanation to the things that we do. We tend to do it because it's what we feel is best for us, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll definitely be doing that because I have been trying to read more books, but I have left all my books just, creating dust on my bookshelf. So I'll consider like listening to audiobooks a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, a little bit at night. Hopefully, again, because, just because you speak English now doesn't mean you stop learning, right? We continuously try to learn. We'll continuously try to increase our vocabulary, in, the way we talk, the way we understand things. So I continuously read English books to improve my language.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So there you have it, everyone. Learning English has many challenges, but it's definitely a valuable skill for the youth out there. So breaking down barriers through increasing your confidence, motivation, and using the accessible resources that's at your fingertip. You don't have to wait to save up all this money to go to a class. It's already there available for you online, right? So do you mind, shall we go to the Q&A session now? We have a few questions that's been coming in. So the first, let me just share the screen for a bit so you can have a look.
Okay.
Okay. So the first questions that we have is, some school requires IELTS certification before accepting foreign students.
Right.
This person would like to know what's the difference between IELTS academic and IELTS regular tests.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Good question. Very specific. So it depends on your purpose. So if your purpose is to study abroad or to another country, then IELTS academic is the way to go. But if you wanted to work, for example, and right now in Indonesia, we have like a surge number of young people, young graduates who wanted to pursue their first job in Australia through working holiday visa provided by the Australian government right now. So most of them are pursuing IELTS general training, because IELTS general training is more suitable for working purposes. So it depends on your motivation. Like, do you want to go for academic, right, or to study, or maybe you want to follow like a fellowship or exchange program? So definitely it's IELTS academic, but for working purpose, IELTS general training it is.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I hope that clarifies any concern that the person may have. Right. Another one is, any recommended reference or apps to learn English for free, because it's very expensive for them to take an English course?
Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned before, so we have YouTube. We have IELTS also has their own application, and you can download it for free. But of course there are some exclusive feature, but I think it's usable for, like, in general, it's usable for, to build your foundation in understanding what IELTS is and giving you enough practices Sorry, there's Azan as well in the background if you can hear it. So, and then Netflix, or watch movie. It's like, I think it's the cheapest way to learn is by watching English movie, American movie, or British movie, or whatever. Currently, I like to watch movie from Quentin Tarantino because it has a lot of dialogue. And then the dialogue is interesting, at least in my for my humor taste, at least. So you can do that, if you like anime, for example, you like watching One Piece or Naruto or whatever anime that you're interested in, find the one that has English subs or English dubbing, right? Or if you like K-drama, for example, I mean, most of my students in Indonesia, they love K-drama. And I told them, well, you can watch K-drama still, but, please just find the one that has English dubbing. It's not pretty, but, you need that to learn English.
That's true. Thank you for that. The third question is quite interesting for me because I know Indonesia speaks American English, and in Brunei, we are more British English. So this is actually talking about the accent. So the person is confused with American and British accents and other different types of accent. They'd like to know which one is easier.
Well, if you ask me personally, or I mean, like, it's subjective, for me, it's American just because it's easier to do it. And then, like, I was born in a time where, pop culture from America, movies, or like games, even games are usually use American accent instead of British. But it's also okay to learn both if you want. But again, you guys, you don't have to sweat over with the accent. It's not really important. This is coming from English language teacher. So accent, it's not really something that you have to pursue. What you have to pursue is that whether you can use that language fluently and it doesn't leave anyone, anyone who listen to you question, like, you saying something that perhaps confusing for them. So that's the whole point of communication and having language itself. Accent is bonus. Some people, if you can say something in British, oh, you sounded posh, you sounded like Harry Potter, or like whatever it is, But for America, you sounded like American. like usually if I say something in American and then I have a friend from maybe UK or something, why you say it in American, Ryan? Because it's easier. It's hard for me to follow the British one, Oh yeah, okay, is it?
It's true. I think that you're quite correct. It's not about the accent. It's about you conveying the message. I mean, even for us in Asia, as ASEAN, we have different types of English accent, right? So I think it's about how we understand each other, not most likely the accent.
That's true.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We have one last question. How to improve our English fluency when we speak?
Oh, okay. How to improve our English fluency when we speak? You speak. How to improve your English fluency? You speak. Of course.
That's a very good one.
But it's all about giving enough time for yourself to practice that target language with any other language that you learn, depending on the target language, right? Yeah. So it's about like how many times that you spend on that language, how many times that you spend not only speaking using that language, but also passively listening, passively reading, and actively writing it. It also affect how you speak, because those four aspects is like helping each other. So it's like one big chunk. So if you forget about one chunk, then it's going to affect the other chunk. Yeah. So it's something that you cannot neglect. So even if you want to, even if you said, oh, I'm good in speaking, like many of my students are good in speaking. When I tested them, their listening skill using IELTS, for example, then they were like, oh my God, why is it so hard? See, even their speaking is 6 or maybe 6.5. Their listening could get like 4.5 or 5. That's not enough for university, acceptance, the university to accept them, So you need those 4.
Yeah.
So if you ask me how you speak, a lot. You have
the most obvious thing, you have to continue speaking, right?
Yeah.
I'll just do one last one. So this is very technical. So to get a scholarship, you need you need a high IELTS score. So how long does it take to achieve a sufficient IELTS score to qualify for a scholarship?
Depending on the scholarship, if you're pursuing master degree, for example, usually master degree needs 6.5 in IELTS, and then 6.0 minimum for the writing itself. If you ask me the duration, it's subjective. Some people only need like maybe 15 hours of preparation and they're done. They could get it. Some 30 hours, some 60 hours, and some even like myself. Before I prepare my IELTS back in 2017. Oh my God, that's like a long time ago. So I prepared myself for 2 years because I know that my English was still not in good enough level to participate in any sorts of scholarship, right? So it took me 2 years because I have to work. I have limited financial as well to support me. So I learned independently through that media that I mentioned, these games and all that stuff. So it took me 2 years for myself to get at least my first one is 7.0 for my IELTS. Yeah, so it's subjective. But if you have already you have enough support financially or maybe from your friends or family, and then you know what you're doing and you know which scholarship that you wanted to pursue, then go for it. And then take some classes or perhaps take online classes or perhaps see for yourself free resources from YouTube, for example. There are a bunch of free IELTS resources in YouTube, and that's more than enough for you to practice yourself to get the necessary score to unlock that opportunity to get a scholarship. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for answering all of this question. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for the Q&A session. It's okay, but don't worry, we'll have more opportunities for interaction in the future. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share a QR code. So in this QR code, we would like to get some of your feedback on what you think about this session. And also, we're allowing you to share your email address. So if you have any questions that hasn't been addressed in this session, let me just share with you here. If you have any questions that you have for Ryan and that you'd like to highlight, do please go on to the Slido QR code. After you have informed us how valuable the session is to you, it'll go to a chat where you can give us your email address, which I will give to Ryan so he can share with you information on best education. Okay, I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. I think it's just loading. Let me just do that for you. All right. So while we're at that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining such an insightful discussion. I think we've learned a lot today. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing your insight and your expertise on the topic. I mean, everyone, just remember, language, it's what helps us bridge the barrier. It helps us overcome the obstacle that we're facing. And it's not just at an academic level. Language can also help us connect with each other, understand people better. It helps us network. That's all the time we have for today's episode. We do hope you enjoyed it as much as we both did. I think
Yeah.
we couldn't stop talking and just like
Yeah.
having input that maybe not everyone could relate to. Um, but yes, so stay tuned. We're going to have another podcast next week.
Mhm.
So until next time, do please keep learning and exploring new horizon. Before we end, I'd like to just share our partners. We'd like to thank our partners here. We have our partners, AU Institute, both from Indonesia and Thailand partners. Thank you so much for supporting us, iSEAu Project, the One ASEAN team, with our podcast. And with that, I bid you all good night. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining. And thank you everyone there who's online.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
Have a nice
Have a good
weekend.
evening, everyone. Yes,
Bye.
good weekend.
Okay.
Okay, we're done.
All right, we're done. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not too bad.
Yeah, not bad. Like, thank you. I will. I'm trying to get more people to answer. I have one person answering so far, sharing
Okay.
their email.
Oh, that's all right.
Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get more.
Mhm. I mean, that yeah, I need like there are more information that I want to say, but like I was like, I know, like my weakness is that sometimes if I speak, then I could not stop. So yeah, I refrain myself. I refrain myself from it. So like yeah, so but
So-
it's fun.
Yeah.
So do you have to stop the live streaming?
Oh, okay.
Are we still on live stream? Are we just talking?
I think so.
Okay,
Blooper.
I'm not sure that how to
let me just see how we can turn off this live stream.
I think from the YouTube, I guess. Still live. Maybe we should just just exit the Zoom.
Yeah, I think that will
Maybe.
help.
Mhm.
Okay. I will see you soon, Rian.
Okay.
I will share with you.